Okay, so this is going to be very different than my typical videos. I promise not to make a habit of this. This very well could be the last one of these videos I ever make, but it's something that I felt kind of relevant to make, and something that I just kind of want to get out there, because this would be like basically a video to my younger self, if I could give one, so to speak. And it's for the guys based on the demographic of people who are watching my channel. So I'm a sport bike rider. I have a very young and 98% male audience, according to YouTube, which I love that. But it is fascinating to see that drastic of a percentage, and as a man myself, I feel that this information could hopefully be somewhat useful to others. And it's what I'm going to be talking about is basically keeping my ego in check, right? Keeping your ego in check and not falling into the peer pressure of others from social media, and not hurting yourself in the end. Having fun, you're on a bike, you're learning your new hobby, you are whatever you're doing, not hurting yourself, because the consequences on a bike are so much more dramatic than any other hobby you have probably ever done in your life, and this, me included. So what you come across online, and I get very few of these, and I'm still in awe at the positivity across my videos as a whole. It does mean a lot to me, truly. So I find that it's so cool to me, being so familiar with this community, bikes, online, all of that, and to get 99% positive stuff is mind-blowing. But for the guys who are new, for those who are not quite able to pick out the stupidity yet, the guys who are not able to pick out the fakeness, the showboating, all of that, I hope to help you better get a grasp of what you're risking. And there's two parts to this. One is going to be your safety, your health, actually not maiming yourself, dying. And two, something that's never talked about on a video that I'm aware of, is the financial aspect of this hobby, because you have so many people, young guys in particular, who put themselves into an almost life-changing amount of debt to try and look cool on the internet. Now, ego, when I say ego, what I'm referring to is for the younger guys, and some people, a lot of people never grow out of this. It's something that kind of tapers as you age. But most guys, if this was deep in you at one point, it's going to be there for life. And ego is essentially going to be a nice way to put insecurity. And insecurity is in a not nice way to put competitive. Competitive is just a productive term for the word insecure, right? You can't be competitive if you're not insecure, because what do you have to prove? So with that in mind, the guys that get on these kinds of bikes, the guys who have this strong desire to get the 1000, to get the 600, to get the uncomfortable, super aggressive, super fast bike, that are extremely capable, are the guys that are also going to be extremely high risk takers. And this goes to my guys too, who, even if you are a cruiser, even if you have a naked, no matter what you're on, the fact that you're riding a motorcycle means, at least based on, referring to my audience, which is largely European, American, and Australian, a little bit of New Zealand in there. But it's a luxury to ride a bike, right? So this is something that you don't have to do. You're taking this risk by choice. You have a higher risk tolerance no matter what you ride than the average person walking around on the streets right now. So you need to keep that in mind already. You have a higher risk tolerance every time you get on this bike. What is making you willing to risk that? And kind of think about that to yourself. What's making you willing to risk hurting yourself, maiming yourself for what, why? What's your purpose? What are you hoping to gain out of it? And then to add on to that, are you doing it to impress others? What percentage of you is going into this just to impress others, just to start making videos just to have something cool to post on social media, just for have something to show off. All of these are very relevant and things to think about when you are, especially the younger you are, the more this applies. And where this also comes into play is the risk of death, the risk of the competitive side of what I'm talking about with ego, right? Is the need to prove others wrong. The ability to say fuck you to whoever doubts you, that chip on your shoulder that you have, that most men have, that are into these kinds of hobbies. And are you able to control that, I guess is what I'm getting at here. So you as a competitive dude are probably very likely to fall into the trap of, I bet you can't make that turn at 80. I bet you can't make that turn at 90. Why can't you wheelie? You're a bitch if you can't wheelie. Why can't you slide your rear? You know, let's go run up the interstate. Why won't you go 150? All of that shit is so stupid. And I understand why people do it, but all of that shit is so stupid to fall into when you're a young guy. You are risking your life. You are risking the quality of your life. This is the big one, is you are risking permanently altering the quality of your life. You dying may be the most potentially great outcome that could happen from some of these wrecks. And this is something where when you are online and you're exposed to a lot of motorcycle wrecks online, on social media, TikTok, YouTube Shorts, whatever, you see people and they have some nasty wrecks. And you know, when you're first new, you think, no, there's no way he's dead. And you see it over and over and over and over again, where some guy takes just a nasty fall and he looks fine. He walks away from the wreck. You know, the dude who just bam right into the side of a truck, and he gets up and walks away. That is the short term. What happens, and what you never see in these little clips, is what has happened to him in the long term. What happens to him when he wakes up a month, 6 months, a year, 6 years, 10 years from that wreck? And I can tell you what happens within these wrecks and what causes so many issues for so many people. And the longer you're around it, the more you're going to meet people who have had these kinds of things and these accidents apply to them, and the warnings they'll give you is when you break a bone, bones heal. When you tear a muscle, when you tear a ligament, when you tear a joint, when you completely separate something from a bone, it will never be the same. And what happens on a lot of these wrecks is you are not seeing, because you could walk on a torn quad, you could walk on a completely separated hamstring when you have enough adrenaline going in your body. What you can't do is get out of bed the same way in a year. What you did just limit is your ability to ever run again. When you shatter your hip, you may be able to walk still because there's so much muscle in that area that still allows you to walk. When that adrenaline runs away, you have a busted hip. You're looking at a hip replacement in 10 years. You're looking at back pain for potentially the rest of your life. You are looking at quality of life changing events. You're looking at losing your losing your nut. This is a very common one due to the way the tanks are made on these bikes. It's just straight up losing your nut. And that comes with the risk of, if you lost one nut, you probably damaged both, right? You probably did some work to the other. Fertility. This is something when you're 19 years old, you probably don't have that high on your priority list. But if you go bust your nut 5 years from now, 10 years from then, are you going to look back and think that that was one of the dumbest things you ever did? Was going and trying to prove that you could weave through those two cars at 90 on the highway? Or, you know, whatever you did, make that turn at 110. Is it worth it? Are any of these things worth it to you as a individual? And the answer is, and this is something that you'll always find consistently across anything, across any type of dangerous sport or harmful, self-harmful, competitive sports, is they will all tell you that it's not worth it. Every single one of them can tell you the injuries they have, the issues they have, how much they wish they could go back in time and change things. And all of this applies to you on your bike. You will never find someone who wrecked on their bike and said, yep, I'm glad I did it. I am so glad that I could hit that turn at 60 to prove I did. And then the one time I washed out and I completely snapped all the quads off of my knee, so glad I did it. Awesome, worth every second. No, they may still ride, they may still absolutely love bikes, but they do not ever say, I can't believe that, you know, that was the most fun I've ever had. I learned so much. You don't learn anything from wrecking. And a common thing that I see on forums, and I've seen this on just, it's kind of prevalent online, is the idea that you're guaranteed to wreck. That's such a dumb mindset to go into it with, is that you're just going to wreck. And that you're just going to wreck and everything's going to be okay. There's a very high likelihood that you will be okay, but there is an equally high likelihood that you are going to be permanently damaged. You are going to tear that thumb. You are going to rip those muscles off of your forearm. You are going to have, you know, 50% strength in your left hand for the rest of your life. All of these are very, very real outcomes that you are risking every time you go out and be dumb. Now, I'm not saying that, you know, unforeseen circumstances. I'm talking about letting your actual insecurity push you into doing things that you never should have done. Getting on the interstate and doing 160. And something that I noticed, and to go back on what I was saying about all the positive comments I get, is that is not common, especially for the younger guys on smaller bikes. Their channels, their TikToks, it honestly kind of pissed me off to read a lot of the comments, and pissed me off even more when I'd see a guy who, you know, they're in their tracksuit and they're talking about track, you fucking suck, whatever, because that's a paywalled hobby, right? Average 18-year-old, 19-year-old, 20-year-old, whatever, it is a paywalled hobby. And for you to go and trash a young kid who's learning how to ride because he can't spend thousands of dollars to get on a track, fuck you. And this goes as well to the guys that, you know, all these comments from everyone else where, you know, a dude on his Ninja is 400, he just got his first 600, he's so excited, and you go fucking rag on him because he doesn't go 180, you know, I'm just making up numbers. He doesn't go 140 on the interstate, he doesn't hit crazy turns. You think his leans make him look like a pussy. He has chicken strips on his tires, whatever, fuck you. None of that shit matters. And I'll tell you, as, you know, looking back, if I was a young dude, if you put me back 10 years ago, you gave me a bike, you gave me a camera, you said post this to TikTok, and I got those comments, I would have been out within, you wouldn't have even been able to finish, I'd have read the first line on one of these fucking comments, and I'd have been so mad. Because I had such a deep-seated insecurity. I'd have been so fucking mad. I'd have been out on the street and I'd have been risking my fucking life going back and forth, just to get a video to prove some dickweed who knows nothing that I'm better, I'm good, I'm worthy of whatever bullshit. And that's something it's really upsetting to me on social media in particular, and it's definitely concentrated towards the newer riders, which is even stupider. And I've seeing some of these comments from actual guys who supposedly ride track to go and talk shit to these guys who are, you know, they barely learned how a clutch worked a month ago. Fuck you. Fuck anyone who tells you that type of thing. Don't fall for it. Don't get egged onto that stupid shit. It's not worth it. It is, I promise it's not worth it. I promise you that video you think that's going to make you get all these, you know, woo, all of this whatever, that you're going to be more respected by the randoms out on the street, you're not. No one gives a fuck. Aside from the fact that you can ride safely and you have fun doing it. And even then, most people really don't give a shit that you're riding for fun. Most people just see the bike. They don't associate the rider with the bike. They just see the bike. That's what is irrelevant to 99% of the population. For the 1% that does own bikes, ride bikes, whatever, your capabilities, cool. Now we're going to look at a 0.0001% of that, of the general population, who can actually appreciate the technical riding ability that you may be putting on, blah, 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 blah. You're looking at impressing 5 fucking people in your state. Who cares? It's not worth it. It's not worth it to go 180 on the interstate and weave through cars and then clip something and die. It's not worth it to go 120 and, you know, hit a bump in the road because your bike suspension was never built to be, you know, pushed the way you're pushing it on a shitty, bumpy interstate, and you're sitting there with a pinned throttle, and you end up, whoop, now you got a death wobble, and you are, you know, potentially getting skin grafts, you are getting, you know, you've torn muscles, you're never going to get that strength back. None of it's worth it. And then the second part of this is the financial burden so many young guys put on themselves to impress others with their bikes. Now, I'm very, very far from the type that's, you know, your dad or your uncle who says, only buy a bike with cold hard cash, only buy used, blah, 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 blah. Huge advocate for buy something you're proud of. Buy something that every time you look at it, it makes you smile, because it'll make that bike, it'll make everything about bikes in any type of luxury vehicle hobby 1,000 times better. That's the whole fucking point, is to be able to go look at it and smile and be proud that that's what you're on, that's what you're going with, that's what you're showing off in public with, right? And anyway, the flip to this is that you would go and buy a bike that you fucking hate just to impress some dickweeds that don't matter. So you're going to buy that 600, you're going to buy that 1000, you're going to buy the Ducati. All of these things, for most people, they don't enjoy them. That's why you're able to find them with so low mileage, is they buy it because they bought it to impress their friend. They're scared of it. They don't have the mental just kind of fortitude to ride it. They get panicked on it once and they almost, you know, fuck up, and then they never touch the thing again. And now they got this $20,000, $30,000 chunk of metal in their garage that they're scared to touch, and it's just sitting there, all because they wanted to show off, when they could have bought something for half the price, a third the price, brand spanking fucking new off the thing. It would have been just as fast in every scenario that they're riding, and they would have had a blast. It would have been comfortable. They would have been having fun. They would have smiled every time they got on it. They would have been happy to show it off. But you fell into trying to impress that 0.01% of whatever bullshit who thinks that only sport bikes are cool, or whatever that you've kind of niche you've fallen into, or thinking that owning a 1000, you know, makes you cool, or that owning a 1000 gives you some kind of presence on the street. No one fucking cares. Even the average bike rider, they don't know. No, you would be amazed if you took, you know, 50 bikes and you put them up, and then you go, let's say we go to a Cycle Gear or whatever, and we pull everyone inside and we say, what are these bikes? Maybe one guy could pick out 5 out of 10. Maybe. Most people aren't as deep into it as you think. Your 1000 doesn't mean near as much as the internet is kind of fooling you into thinking it does. And hell, for the non-riding population, the fact that it's not an 1800cc Harley, it's a little bitch bike. You know, just go ahead and deal with that. Your 200 horsepower, fuck it, it's not 1800cc. That's how the general population kind of sees these things. And what you're doing is you're buying something that you hate. You buy something that you may be potentially scared of. You're young, you're burdening yourself by potentially going into debt to impress others for something that you don't really like. And for what? Right? And this happens a lot with the European bikes, is, or really with the 1000s, the 600s in general, is you think that these are, you know, this is going to be great. This is something that I can afford the payments on. What you didn't think about was the fact that you have to buy new tires every 3,000 miles. What you didn't think about is that you're going to be riding around underinsured because you, oh fuck, I went to go get the bike and insurance is $2,000, $3,000, $4,000. You are putting yourself, so now you're riding underinsured or uninsured in a lot of cases, and you are just a rolling liability to yourself and others. And even if you are a truly carefree, don't give a shit person, I think everyone has some sense of what if that will be sitting in the back of their head when they're rolling around with that bare minimum bullshit insurance, right? I genuinely do. I don't think anyone confidently gets on their bike with 2 wheels that understands how insurance works, that looked at everything, looked at all their options when they were shopping and said, fuck, and then walks away happy with it. No, you need to take these costs into account, and that's going to be like $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 is a yearly expense, depending on how many miles you put on your bike. Let's factor in another $500 to $600 for the tires. Now we got to do the services. How many miles do we put down? If we're getting a BMW or a Ducati, we're going to be looking at $500 to $600 for your oil change, for your first service. You're going to be looking at, chickens. You're going to be looking at all sorts of just little sneaky expenses you didn't quite realize. So all this money that you're burning for a bike that you don't really like, you're not that comfortable on, you don't have fun, you feel like you're just kind of stuck because it doesn't have the gear range that you thought it did. It's loud and, it's hot, all to impress some loser because they said that your Ninja 400 made you a bitch, or that no one who's impressive rides a Ninja 400. Stuff like that. Little emergent. Where's that guy even turning? I don't know where this is. I don't know where we're going here. But all of that is extremely, extremely prevalent with guys, especially when you get your first job. The younger you are, you're more likely to go and get the bike with these crazy payments and not really think about the overhead cost associated with these kinds of race built machines that come with the homologated tires and that need a little bit more service than, say, your whatever, your Honda, whatever, right? You could go buy Michelin 6s, ride those bitches for 15,000 miles and never even consider looking at another tire, versus if you go buy the Corsas or the S22s, you're going to be wondering if my tires are, what's happening to my tires after 2,500 miles. And that's not cheap. It is not cheap at all, and it's such a burden. And this kind of ruins the fun factor for a lot of it too. And this is what I'm getting at with the ego thing is the lack of fun you're going to have by being burdened by the purchase you're making. Just really sit on that one for a minute. But there's no car better than a paid off car, as they say. There's no bike better than a paid off bike. There's nothing that will bring you less stress than something that you don't have to worry about. And if every month you are, kind of scraping coins to get that payment, or you are just, let's say your insurance, say you pay the insurance up front, and now you just sit there and you look at your calendar like a fucking clock on the countdown of when you have to drop that next 3K, right? All of these are issues. Didn't even wave. What a guy. Unbelievable. Anyway, you're just sitting at your calendar, just staring at it, waiting on the day that 3K comes and hits again, and you're checking your bank account. Is it going to hit? Is it going to hit? I got 3 months, I got 4 months, and you're paranoid. Or you buy, let's say, the Ducati, you buy the Aprilia, you buy something and you buy it used and you buy it out of warranty, and every time you had an issue with something, the water pump, whatever, something that was fixable, every time you go get on that bike now, because it's not under warranty and because it was, you bought the Ducati, you now have to go look at it, and when you go to start that bitch up, you're scared. That is a miserable feeling. Every time you go start that thing up, you're scared that this is the day that I can no longer afford my bike, that I'm about to bankrupt myself trying to go ride my bike. Say the weather's finally good. This happens to a lot of people in the winter. They finally get to be able to ride, and something's just completely cooked in their bike. Yeah, I'm gonna piss this guy off. Whoops, daisy. Don't do that. So anyway, all of this to say, don't risk your life, don't ruin yourself physically and financially just to impress others. It's not worth it. It is never worth it. And I take this from someone who fell into this trap worse than anyone. I promise you it's not worth it. The nagging pains you wake up with to prove that you could do something, I don't look back at the things I did and say that was, glad I did that. I just wake up and think about the fact that my hip hurts every day. I wake up and think about the fact that, my left pec, tore my left pec. Excuse me, my right pec. I don't know how I just got those mixed up. Tore my right pec. It's never going to look the same as my left. Snap that bitch. I don't think about, the dumbbells that I threw up that day. I think about the fact that basically ended my pressing career with any sort of impressive anything. All of that. and like the stress, the undue burden that you're putting on yourself by buying the bike that's too expensive, that you don't enjoy, that you only like because everyone else says it's cool, not because you actually think it's cool, not because you actually enjoy riding it, not because you have fun on it, or that you're scared of, because that's also very common, and there's nothing wrong with admitting that, is that you're just straight up scared of the bike. Very common, very, very common on Harleys, is no one wants to go buy their first bike and it'd be a little bitch bike, right? So they go drop the 30K, 35K on their Harley, and it's got such a low end pull and it's so goddamn heavy, they're terrified of the bike. And those things see 100 miles a year, and it's because their buddies push them out to finally go do it. So anyway, I won't make any videos like this possibly ever again. I'm sorry if this one's preachy, and I know this is different than my typical, but it is something that I hope will help put into some perspective, something for the newer guys, and for the younger guys in particular, just because it is such, I consider it a very important thing to think about and to be actually spoken, because there's so few that actually do, and there's so much push to just go get the coolest video, excuse me sir, just to go get the coolest video, to be the coolest whatever you're doing, and yeah, so terrible conclusion here, but I hope this helps. Again, anything in the future that goes back towards my usual, please let me know if you'd like me to cover anything, and I hope this doesn't come off as too preachy. Thank you.